we've really evolved from agents being prompting loop to agents being autonomous, self-discovering, and long-running actors. We set them tasks overnight and then we wake up and backlog is resolved and bugs are squashed. All of that is 10,000 times easier because of all of the agents that we have internally. My personal favorite is like a predictive model that based off various attributes of the customer and the product can predict whether this customer is going to return. And it's able to produce this really rich level of insight in just minutes. Limits of what we can achieve will really be based off of how much we can delegate at once, more so than like what our personal capacities are.
Hey everyone, my guest today is Jess, product lead at Anthropic for Cloud Managed Agents. Really excited to get Jess to demo how to build an agent from scratch, maybe talk about how Anthropic uses agents internally, and maybe even just talk about what an agent even is. So welcome, Jess.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So everyone's talking about agents and the agentic stuff and everything. So let me ask you, so how would you define what an agent is and what are the main components of an agent?
Man, what a loaded question. So once upon a time, agents were really just prompting loops where you were just trying to get questions and responses in a loop. And I think that's really evolved towards permissioning and access to third-party systems, internal tooling, and sensitive data. And that level of access now requires permissioning, observability, steering, not in the same way that it was just question and answer before.
Got it.
And so they're really, the underlying components are still, the model, the system prompt and behavioral instructions, and the actual harness driving the loop. But the sophistication of what we are asking agents to achieve is higher. So that has made the sophistication of the harness higher as well.
Okay. Yeah, because there's no, agents can use tools, they can have memory, right? There's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And why don't we also just define what a harness is? Like, what is a harness?
Yeah, the harness is the core scaffolding around the model that gives it the ability to run those tools and to call its memory and to know when to ask for human-in-the-loop input versus to just continue executing on its task. So the harness is really what elevates us from the sort of random sampling of just tokens in and tokens out to actual actionable products.
And let me throw you a curveball, actually. So do you think the model should be developed with the harness? Like are they kind of joined at hip?
I think I am quite biased, but I also think that it is impossible to get the maximum possible performance without tying together the harness and the model. Now, the components of the harness and maybe the thickness of the harness will change over time as models get more and more capable. However, when we test our models and when we are assessing their performance, we always have to test it in conjunction with a harness. And are we going to test it with all the different harnesses of the world? We're going to select the harnesses that we have built. And so there is an aspect of, the necessity of building models is that you have to be testing them with harnesses, and that sort of keeps them paired together.
Okay, so you test them with like Claude, Cowork, and Cloud Code, and maybe some third-party harnesses, right?
Yeah. And of course we run against like open source evals and whatnot, but at a certain point, every single model distribution now is through a harness. And so we also need to be testing them through harnesses as well.
Okay, now let's talk about your product. What is managed agents, and how is it different from just like me talking to the messages API?
Yeah. So managed agents is really the evolution of where we see task orchestration going. And earlier I talked about how we've really evolved from agents being prompting loops to agents being autonomous, self-discovering, and long-running actors with access to lots of third-party systems and need for both permissions and guardrails. And so Cloud Managed Agents was developed with that in mind. Rather than just being a prompting loop that we've sort of like added different capabilities onto, this is a pre-built harness and companion infrastructure to allow an agent to run complex tasks at scale. And so for us, the core motivation behind Cloud Managed Agents is that the return on effort for building an agent should be extremely, extremely high. So we wanted to build easy to stack primitives and easy to use flexible developer APIs with out of the box infrastructure. And all of that should be really, really low effort. But then you should be able to delegate hugely complex work that might have taken you days, months, weeks to actually execute.
Okay, so it takes care of like a lot of the infra stuff that you have to build to even get an agent to run. Is that kind
Yes,
of
yes, exactly.
got it? Okay, all right. Well, then without further ado, do you want to show us how easy it is or hard it is to build a managed agent? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we find it easy. All right, here I am in our Claude console, and I have a pre-built agent that I've already configured. So here you see the core components of this agent. So one is the model selection. This continues to be what drives sort of like the intelligence layer underneath the agent. Here are the system prompt, which is the raw text that the model gets to define its behavior, its guardrails, and a high level awareness of the kinds of tasks that you will orchestrate to it. I've given it access to a built-in toolset that we ship with every Claude Manage agent. And I've given it the ability to basically interact with its file system and produce results. I've actually set its permissions to always allow each of these tools, but we also have the flexibility to configure these as requesting permission, so keeping a human in the loop for any of these actions. In this particular case, I didn't grant it any skills, but here's where I would grant it skills as well.
So this is an agent to analyze data and
Yes.
kind of like a data analyst.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
So this particular agent runs analysis on a fictitious grocery store called Just in Time, and I actually give it an initial prompt that gives it the data schemas, guidance on how to actually execute the task, and I give it also a file, a really large, like multi-million line file for it to analyze as well. Throughout the course of the session run, you can see it running all of its tools and calling the model selectively to run the analysis. And at the very end, it outputs HTML files that can be rendered in the browser so that you can see the results of the analysis.
Okay.
All of these particular events are the actions that the model is taking, and you can see that I'm actually not steering it except for the initial event. And at the very end, these outputs are produced for me.
This episode is brought to you by Riverside. I've used Riverside for years to record my podcast because it records in 4K resolution each person locally, so the audio and video still comes through clean even if a guest's Wi-Fi gets shaky. But the reason I love it now more than ever is what happens after we stop recording. If I go in here, that I can use these AI tools to remove pauses, remove filler words, and just clean up the recording. And I can also edit the transcript directly, and it will automatically generate clips with captions ready to publish to YouTube, Spotify, and all types of social media platforms, all from one place. As a one-person creator business, that matters a lot. Riverside is the upgrade your content workflow needs. Try it at creators.riverside.com/Peter Yang and use code Peter Yang at checkout to get 1 month completely free. That's creators.riverside.com/Peter Yang. Now back to our episode. And what is the initial prompt for this particular conversation? It's just like go analyze this huge file.
You could think of it as basic as that, but I had a very specific schema that I wanted it to be aware of. So, for example, I wanted it to know exactly what the structure of the data set was beforehand, and that way I can front load the initial exploration that I would have ordinarily had to do. And then I wanted to break down the steps into discrete segments so that I could get very predictable outputs at the end of the task, because these agents are, randomized actors. So you do need to be somewhat prescriptive sometimes if you want to have very predictable outputs.
Okay, and this will help with like debugging and stuff too, right? Because like they can figure out which step.
And to your point about debugging, actually, directly in Claude Console, we have an agent that runs and analyzes actually the full session history associated with the agent. And so after I've run this, I actually can use this debug agent to look for areas where I could have improved this agent even more.
I see. And what is the output again? You said there's like an HTML file
Yeah,
based
yeah.
off?
So it produces three different HTML files, and I can pull this up right now, actually.
So okay, so basically the components are there's a model, there's a prompt, right? There's tool access, and then there's skills that are optional.
Yes.
For tool access, like if I want to hook up to my internal database or something, like there's like a whole set of process for that, right? Or yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So one of the ways in which you can hook up an agent to a third-party database or a third-party system is through MCP.
Uh,
MCP exposes a standardized way to communicate to external services, and it includes an authentication layer in front. So that allows you to safely access these internal services that you might not want just anyone to access.
why don't you just like briefly talk about if I didn't use cloud managed agents, like if I had to set this up from scratch, what kind of scaffolding needs to go into this thing to build it
Yeah,
from scratch? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that if you're working with a raw prompting loop, um, then all of your work is highly, highly synchronous, and you are constantly dependent on like the prior request that you strung together to complete successfully in
Mm,
order to get to the next step. And I think that that worked in a world where we were just asking the chatbots to write haikus for us, and we were
mhm.
doing very, very simple tasks. And then over time, that has become increasingly unscalable. So if I delegated a really large task to an agent, and for example, my like something went wrong in that first initial message that I sent, and either I dropped the message or it was like slightly off from my expectations, then my ability to pivot my integration and to handle that gracefully is significantly lower. So it's important for us to evolve towards these more self-running, self-recovering agent loops that can recover from errors, recover from going slightly off course, re-steer themselves back, and then just keep you in the loop as they're doing so that you're aware of their process.
When you say self recovery, you mean like they run into error, they can like debug their own error, they can do some searches and figure it out,
Yes,
right? Yeah,
yes, yeah.
got it.
And then even more baseline than that, um, if they produce an output that is unexpected, but then they're aware of what a good output is supposed to look like, they can, revise their thinking and really adjust their course of action. That is very difficult to wire together in just a raw prompting loop.
All right, us go back. Do you think the output generate now, or is it still
Yeah.
working?
All right. So this agent produces three primary artifacts. So first, an analysis into the products. Just an overall high level inspection of like common order patterns in shopping carts. It also produces a analysis into the shoppers and sort of heat maps on when they're shopping, um, in a and these really interesting like radar charts. And then lastly, like my personal favorite is like a predictive model that based off of various attributes of the customer and the products, can predict whether this customer is going to return. So all of this was just with like a simple prompting and access to Python packages in the agent's environment. And it's able to produce this really rich level of insight in just minutes.
And so the prompt has like some stuff about like the format of the three reports that we want and the data that we want, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I put into the system prompt is general performance optimizations because I do want this to be a general agent that I can reuse across a lot of different data sets. And then what I put into the initial prompt I sent to it is that highly specific schema discovery and the actual task description on how to run its analysis in sequence.
Well, okay. Well, let me ask you this. So now you have a bunch of traces and a bunch of outputs. Like like how do we build evals for this agent? How do we know it's like not going off the rails? Yeah.
Yeah, evals is definitely the toughest part about building agents today because I think that what has traditionally been a uh, traditional eval development is evolving as the tasks get more complex. I
Mm,
think that the traditional eval setup of here's a set of initial prompts, and here's how we want the agent to produce results in response. That still works. I think that we're also seeing folks do more sophisticated things like replays of more complex, like multi-string kinds of interactions with agents,
Yeah.
or A/B testing in different versions by sending the like same string of sort of user interactions and seeing how that ultimately changes the responses. I think
Interesting.
another trend that we're also enabling in Claude Manage agents is like a built-in eval loop, where if the agent itself knows to grade its outputs, then you can actually pull the eval directly into the agent's work rather than having it be outside of the course of the session.
Okay, yeah, this is kind of what I do in Cloud Code. Like it spits out an output, and I try to get another agent to run the eval. And then if the eval sucks, then I try to get the other agent to work again. Like just keep
Yeah,
going. Yeah, loop.
basically,
So
yeah. When you
yeah,
when you can have agents evaluating their own work, potentially in separate context windows to avoid bias, then you're
yeah.
always going to get a better output.
And just real quick on evals, like do you guys do like pass fail evals, or like do you do like scoring evals or all kinds of evals?
We do a
You know?
mix. There's definitely
Okay.
binary pass fails. There's definitely scoring, which is more like LLM as judge and like applying sort of more of a letter grading type approach. And then there's also triggering evals for things like you can make sure that this type of action is actually triggered in general. For example, with skills, something that we worked on very early on was making sure that skills triggered properly at the right time, because the
Yeah.
whole point behind skills is progressive disclosure.
Oh yeah, it wasn't that good at. I think that's gotten better over time. I used to have to manually trigger the skills with like slash commands,
Yeah.
but it's getting a little bit better over time. Got it. Okay. I feel like as these agents become more autonomous, right, and they can do longer running tasks, I feel like it's more about like what is your goal and what's the outcome that you want it to have. Like, what do you think about that? Like that kind of changes the prompting and everything, right? Like, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It definitely changes things. Um, I think that, once upon a time there were structured outputs, right? We told an agent specifically, your output must adhere rigidly to this structured, code formatting.
Yeah.
And then we will string together a lot of glue to make sure that these big blobs of JSON, structured data, turn into something like beautifully rendered in the browser. I think that as models have become more capable and as harnesses have evolved, the sort of outcome has become the structured output. The outcome is sort of a meta structured output where we don't need to tell the agent anymore, okay, like, this is the exact structure of your response, and I will glue all of these together and create something rich and interactive. We're just skipping straight ahead and saying, like, let's build this rich and interactive thing. And this is sort of my tastemaker's assessment of what good would look like. And because we now have the infrastructure for these agents to run autonomously, the agents can actually self-correct along the way rather than relying us to string together all these intermediate outputs.
Okay, so it's not like, here's like 5 sections you gotta adhere to, here's the character count, here's like what you gotta do. And it's more like, I think it's actually kind of harder now, because like, what's the example of a tastemaker output? It's like, hey, you gotta make it beautiful and interactive, or you like,
Yeah,
what's
I
the,
mean,
yeah.
we see people using it for like slide generation and content creation. I think that's like one area where outcome optimization is really useful, just like visual artifacts and editorial content. Um, the other place where we see it being useful is on, for example, in the predictive model that I just showed. Let's say that I needed it to achieve like a specific score of 90% in a sort of like accuracy benchmark. Then I've run tests with this agent before to try to always optimize for building a model that will hit that score, and it's iterated until it got there.
Okay, got it. Okay, got it. That makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense to try to get the agents to do their own loops first before the human eyes have to come into play. It's just like make
Yeah,
as much progress as possible. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
well, let me switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about how you guys use agents internally at Anthropic. And yeah, maybe you can't screen share your Slack, but I'm curious how Anthropic PMs, technical staff. What kind of help and leverage has agents helped you guys internally doing your work?
Yeah, for me, it's really been about depth. And I think that access to our code base has been the biggest unlock for me. I think that one, it helps me just like manage state more easily, rather than poking a bunch of engineers on what they're doing. I can just track the PRs directly and see which ones are merged, which ones are deployed. Um, I think there's also an aspect of like I deeply understand and interact with my product so much more than I've ever been able to in the past because it's so much faster for me to either prototype an agent on Claude Managed Agents because I can use Claude Code, or just interrogate the code base on like exactly how everything is working. So anything from going into a customer RFP and filling out all of their security check marks to diagnosing problems in the field, unblocking users who are having trouble, or helping them scale by like helping them understand like our specific architecture. um, all of that is 10,000 times easier because of all of the agents that we have internally.
Okay, so let's kind of break that down into a few things. So, you come into work on Monday and be like, hey, hey, Claude, what did my engineers ship last week? Like, do you ask that kind of question, or like, how do you?
Um, for me, I have some scheduled runs going that like summarize activity. Um, but I still do a lot of the deep dives on a more sort of ad hoc basis based off of the questions I'm getting or like the pitches I need to prepare for or the customer conversations I'm about to have.
Okay, got it. Okay, got it. So, like, you're going to an enterprise to like talk about managed agents, and you need to like personalize the pitch for that company or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and do you guys have like a feedback? Like, I know some people are active on Twitter, even so it's pretty toxic. But like, how do you get feedback for your product? Like, do you have like an enterprise Slack group or something?
I do have agents monitoring our Slack channels. I sit in a bunch of Slack channels with a bunch of customers, and I love talking to customers directly. But for those I'm not able to talk to directly, it is useful to have agents sort of summarizing the activity that's happening there. Um, I think that like we have started to evolve towards thinking about agents as always on, like you should be able to tag them anywhere, but they also should be proactively surfacing things toward for you in the way that a coworker truly would. And so I think that like there's two aspects to which our agent usage is really powerful. One is the level of access of data we give it, and then two is the interaction styles that we expect of our agents, which is it should be human like, it should be proactive and not just reactive.
Is proactive through like triggered events and like cron jobs, or like how do you make it proactive? Just like,
Yeah,
yeah.
proactive is on triggered events and cron jobs and like continuously refreshing the data that has available so that if it is long running and it's like constantly slurping up information, it needs to be as up to date as you are.
Okay,
And that shouldn't be just, on an ad hoc basis. That should be proactive.
got it. Yeah, yeah. It's gotta have the most up to date context, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't you ask this question? How do you compare your conversations with Claude and agents versus your conversation with coworkers? Like, what happens more throughout the day?
Interesting. That's a great question.
Yeah. I feel
Um,
like I talk to Claude more. I'll be honest. Yeah.
it is true. I do. I think particularly when I'm in a new space, I find myself spending a ton of therapy time with Claude, just trying to wrap my arms around a thornier concept. And I think that it up levels my conversations with my teammates because I'm able to come to a conversation with like a true opinion and a lot of baseline research done very quickly. And so I'm not asking the like, you know, please spin me up questions. We're able to engage at a deeper level.
I mean, I guess that's probably expected with the Anthropic, right? Because like you guys are encouraged to use Claude. Yeah. Do you guys pull up Claude in like a decision meeting or like a team meeting and like try to, yeah,
Yes.
you do that?
Yeah. Claude is a really good neutral judge for certain things. We have an API review, Claude, that basically, if we're really stuck at an impasse with how we want to shape certain components of our API, then we do tag in Claude to tell us when our biases are getting the better of us.
Okay.
But we all of our primitives are definitely there to be able to allow for this kind of interaction, this sort of like agent to agent communication.
All right. So just to wrap up this section, how would you say you typically spend your day, or I guess no real typical day, right? But like, do you talk to a lot of enterprise customers? Do you do like a lot of roadmap planning? You're like shipping stuff yourself? Like, how do you typically spend your day?
Yeah, I think that my day now is spent a lot more in the customer discovery and like sort of integration journey process than it has been before. And I think that's awesome. I think it's because, frankly, like we're all moving so fast that like I said, the kind of conversations that we're all having has been like seriously up leveled. I think previously, if I spent this much time in customer conversations, it might be like, like please debug this like tiny little thing that is like, a problem that I've debugged 100 times. But now
Yeah.
because they have agents and because we have agents and because we're pushing the boundaries, the conversations are now like, okay, how would we build this super futuristic thing together? And like, what are our principles around it? And how can we push that forward in the next like 2 weeks? So those kind of those kind of
Yeah.
conversations are really exciting for me. And like, I really, really do love spending time with our customers. I also spend a ton of time prototyping. And so, one thing I love about managed agents is because it's so easy to spin up an agent, and because my work changes day to day and it never really looks the same, week over week, uh, I need to be able to spin up an agent that is perfectly suited for that specific task of the moment. And it's okay if I throw that agent away. Like it doesn't have to be the most beautifully productized thing in the world.
Okay.
Um, and so I spend a lot of time bashing my own product by basically automating my own work. And that it takes me maybe half an hour to spin up an agent, but I try to have like a different one going every couple of weeks.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, I'll give an example. So we had a wait list for some of our advanced features, and it was like a 4,000 organization long wait list, and it was filled with invalid entries and duplicates and all the kind of stuff that you get on like a traditional published web form. And so I know that this agent, or I know that this wait list is only really going to be relevant for the next few weeks until we get this feature out into the public and make it self-serve. So I just needed to spin up an agent that would automate my next few weeks of work with this waitlist, like parsing out all the invalid entries, like assessing which ones are the highest likelihood to convert and actually give really high feedback. And I basically embedded it with like access to our internal systems and our databases and whatnot to make that assessment and figure out who to pull in off the wait list on a daily basis. That's just like a few weeks of work, and there's no point in like building something super shiny for it. And
Yeah.
so having the a really, really good, easy to use pre-built infrastructure that just automates building an agent is like a huge unlock for me. And I can take those kinds of tasks and just repeat them.
Okay. So basically, this agent looks at the big waitlist and then like cleans it up and then like sends invites to people on the waitlist. Is that kind of what it
Yeah,
does?
yeah. Like
Yeah.
people who are highest likelihood to be high value testers for us.
Got it. People who are like the most active Twitter complainers, basically. No, it's okay. No. Okay. I don't have to be a company to use this product, right? I think you were going to show me how to do this in Cloud Code, or like
Yeah,
can I just use this as an individual? Yeah.
as long as you have an API key with us, then you should be able to use it. In fact, we have a ton of usage from individuals. It actually kind of surprised me, but like I think that we're seeing a lot of individuals just like automate their lives with Cloud Manage agents.
But like, when should I use this product versus just like try to build a skill or like a weekly cron job or something? Like you said, there's a lot of individuals using it, right? Mhm.
Yeah. Keep in mind that these are really long running cloud hosted sessions. So anything that's running directly in your cloud code is
Yeah.
bound by the constraints of your laptop and when it's on. And So using Cloud Managed Agents basically pushes that all to the cloud. It increases the capacity of the work that you're able to do and also the longevity of
Okay. So stuff like maybe like some sort of online competitive research or like what are people using it for?
it in their personal lives.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's like a new parent who basically has her entire like child's sort of like the hourly schedule of like feedings and like um tummy time and all of the things that new parents have to worry about basically fully managed by Claude. Um and then she also has like these like fridge monitors and like uh grocery management agents running as well. Uh
Yeah.
so yeah, I I don't actually have insight into what people are doing at scale because like, we redact a lot of that information internally, but from anecdotal usage, like honestly, just using these as like your personal assistant uh is, they're the ultimate customizable agents, right? You can do them for whatever you need.
Like I'll tell you my bias. Like I feel like sometimes companies tend to set up agents like they make it too complicated right off the bat. You know, they're just like they want to have like orchestrators, they want to have like all kinds of stuff. And then my bias is just like want to just build one agent and see if it actually works and people actually use it. But like you've talked to a lot of enterprises. What are some best practices to roll this out? Yeah,
I think that a lot of enterprises make the immediate jump to like, how could I automate this like crazy 20 team workflow
yeah.
that would have required like a lot of like cross-cutting coordination and these like multi-month processes. Like I mean, super ambitious, very exciting, but I do think that there is something really valuable about just like, okay, how do we unlock the individual? Like, how do we make any individual on any team feel exponentially more powerful? If like one Peter and one Jess is suddenly like, wait, I don't need to make dependency requests because I have these agents that are able to extend the kind of work that I'm able to do the design work that previously I would have had to request a human for, etc. Um, then like you've supercharged like one individual, right? You might not have completely like eviscerated an entire like multi-quarter process, like compliance process that everyone hates, but you've like instilled the kernel of like creativity and sort of like autonomy within like the individuals of your organization. So starting there and starting by just like getting your individual employees to raise a ceiling of what they can do creatively and like what they can ship in isolation is the first starting point. And then from there you can start working on these like multi team like mega processes and start raising the ceiling of complexity there. But like there is a huge amount of value that's unlocked simply by making everybody feel like they have their own power to develop products as sort of like a one person startup.
Like you have a bunch of one-person startups inside a large company, basically.
Yeah.
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 That's interesting. Okay, yeah. So basically, and like, do you just let anyone make their own individual agent, or do you kind of like? I think it's probably best practice to actually give some like spotlight examples, right? Of people who actually know what they're doing. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think giving people templates and then letting them iterate freely off those templates is always a good place. Um, you avoid the writer's block of like, what do I do? But then you give them the creativity to iterate.
Cool. This is very good, and I think getting the agent into the hands of actual users quickly, maybe not all users, but at least like some beta users, that's kind of where the rubber meets the road, right? So like don't go too crazy on evals before you even get in the hands of any users. Like do you
Yeah.
suggest that? Yeah.
The,
Mm.
the vibe testing is honestly the most important first step. And at a certain point, you outgrow the vibe testing because you can't really like do aggregate vibe signals at scale, and that's when you do evals.
Okay. Okay. It's hard to present the vibe testing. I don't know there's a way to quantify the vibes. I guess you can have a bunch of quotes and stuff, but it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I guess last question. So I mean, this stuff is moving so fast. Where do you think this stuff is going to go? Like, let's just say like 3 or 6 months from now. Like, you think we're going to like before I go to bed, I'd be like, hey, just take care of everything for me, and then, then when I wake up, it's done. Or yeah.
Honestly, to some degree, these long running agents are kind of doing that. Like we set them tasks overnight and then we wake up and, backlog is resolved and bugs are squashed. Um, but I think that we will see the workday like becoming sort of the limits of what we can achieve will really be based off of how much we can delegate at once, more so than like what our like personal capacities are, because we are going to be able to increasingly lean on these agents as partners. So that's one thing. I think like on an industry level, what I'm really fascinated by is I'm starting to see that vertical SaaS is sort of just like becoming increasingly specialized. And so the idea that you would have like an accounting agent versus a healthcare agent, like that is starting to become like more and more and more narrow as people realize that the models are getting smarter. And so like broad domain expertise is sort of there. And so like the real value add is like these incredibly specific and niche use cases. And so it's really interesting because I think that like getting the right agent to do the job now is getting so specialized and tailored that having the shared thing now is like the context patterns and the task orchestration patterns more so than like, okay, this is the canonical way to build like a finance agent or like a healthcare agent.
So for example, like maybe instead of a general accounting agent, is like a accounting agent for like solopreneurs or something, like just like more
Yeah.
specialized.
Everything is just becoming incredibly specialized, particularly as people are able to build products, for themselves and scale them externally. Like so what we're seeing is as as you realize that you can now build software for like these hyper specific use cases, people are scaling those things, and so that means that the kind of products that we're seeing distributed are increasingly verticalized.
Yeah, I think this is actually really interesting. I actually have more questions about this, just real quick, because I feel like I can build a product like an AI product for accounting for solopreneurs or something. But I feel like someone could just build a scale that's just as good. Like it's kind of hard to think about like a long-standing SaaS product, like around this.
Yeah.
I don't really have a good answer, but yeah.
Yeah. I think that where the products that will sort of survive this transformation are the ones that meet their users where their workflows are, right? So it's about being one hyper specific to like the tasks at hand and adaptable, I guess, beyond those specific tasks. But then two, like being exactly where you need it to be. And so like that always on kind of agent pattern is definitely important because you want that agent to pop up at the right time, but it also needs to be in like the discoverable place where you would expect those workflows to be handled.
Increasingly, that's just like in Cloud Code or some of these apps, right? Like, 'cause I don't want to navigate their website and like fill a bunch of forms. Like, I feel like I want to bring my personal agent, like with all my context, and I want to get it to go talk to someone's accounting agent, just like go figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
wherever your work lives. And so for like, you know, for a lot of engineering teams, that will be increasingly in Cloud Code, and everyone sort of is becoming engineering team. But also like just like even if we think about Vercel's Chat SDK and how they had the sort of vision to realize that like everything is chat now because like agents interact best in chat, and like these sort of like interactions with our colleagues are getting like more and more compressed because like the speed that we're iterating at is so much faster, right? And so like I do think that a lot of these, I mean, it sounds kind of basic, but like these sort of to meet users where you are, it has to live in Cloud Code and it has to live in chat.
Yeah, it's gotta live in chat, and the chat has to be connected to all your personal contacts. It's not just like a random
Yeah,
chat window on
yeah,
website. You know.
yeah.
Well, fascinating world living. Yeah, but this is super helpful, Jess. Where can people find you or learn more about Claude Managed Agents?
Yeah, so definitely use the Claude Code skill to learn more about Claude Managed Agents. We also have traditional artisanal documentation that I assure you humans still read
Yeah.
at platform.claude.com. I'm Jess _Yan on Twitter if anyone wants to reach me.
All right, Jess. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. I hope the agents don't take over everything, but I look forward to having them save time on what we don't want to do. Yeah.
Thanks so much.